Okay, everyone. Morning. I hope we're all doing okay. Hope we had a reasonable break in the Easter holidays. Okay, what I want you to do today is we're going to look at Joan of Arc. Now, this does follow on from what we looked at when we were talking about the Hundred Years' War, the Hundred Years' War between France and England. And if you remember, it lasted for longer than 100 years, and for all the time, they weren't necessarily fighting. So, Joan of Arc is a very famous figure in France who led the French army. It was actually quite an important factor in driving the English pretty much out of France. So, what we're going to do is obviously the front page, you can see that. Here's just some key facts about Joan of Arc, about when she was born, and actually, by the time she was your age, she was pretty much leading battles. Um, Now, the third slide, two images of the execution of Joan of Arc, and what I'm going to want you to do is to try and compare them. So you see Joan is in the middle of both pictures, but think about in what ways are they different. Think about the similarities and the differences between those pictures, and maybe just put some couple of bullet points below here of similarities and differences, or you could circle the slides, to show differences. Now, once you've done that, I'd like to move on to this, which is where you'll need your textbook. Okay, pages 40 and 41. Looking at sources A to F from the textbook, and use the pages to fill in the table on the next slide. So, if we just move forward to the next slide, you can see, got a table like this. Now in this column here, what does it tell us about Joan of Arc? So in that, you're going to look at the content of the source. What does the source actually say about Joan of Arc? What can we learn from that source? Now, in the next three columns, we need to look at the nature of the source, the origin of the source, and the purpose of the source. So if we just go back, the nature, what type of source is it? Is it a cartoon, a painting, a speech? Is it a diary extract? Is it part of a film? That impacts on whether we can trust what a source says. Secondly, the origin of the source. And you can see who produced the source, when did they produce it, and where did they produce it. We're looking for anything that might suggest bias, or whether the person who's written the source was there at the time, whether they knew very much about it. And then the purpose, why was the source produced? So, has it been produced to persuade people of things that might affect how much we want to believe it? Has it been produced to inform us? That will have a different impact on what we think. So, as you can see, the nature here for source A, if you can see that on page 40, it's a painting of Joan of Arc, painted in 1450, 19 years after she died. Now that might give you some ideas about whether you want to necessarily trust what that source says. For some of the sources, it might be quite difficult to work out what the purpose is, why it's been produced. If you're not sure, you can leave that blank. But this is what you want you to do for sources A to F. Try and fill in that table. Okay, once you're done with that, and that might take you most of the half hour this morning, that's okay. Now, the next slide, using the information, your own research, or the video clips above, write some notes or some bullet points to answer the following questions. Make sure you're including examples. What was Joan's background? What was her family life like? What sort of job did her parents have? Whereabouts in France was she from? Why was the Hundred Years' War quite badly named? Well, I mentioned something about that earlier. You could scroll back and see what I said. Think about the length of it. Were they fighting all the time? Those might be things to think about. Why was it a surprise that Joan was put in charge of the French army? There's quite a few reasons you could think of for that. Why is Joan of Arc still remembered today? So think about why was she important and what changed because of her. If you like, what was her legacy? So this is what I'm going to want you to do in today's lesson probably also this is going to last over into part of our next lesson. So if you don't get it finished today, absolutely do not worry, especially when you think this first clip is 23 minutes long. So you're definitely not going to be able to fit that in, plus filling in the table. So this will roll over into our next lesson. Once we've done that, once we've finished looking at Joan of Arc, we're going to look at some other important women of the Middle Ages and see what we can tell about the opportunities that women had, and also the fact that some women were able to move outside the expectations or the limitations of what they were allowed to do, and sort of really push the envelope, if you like. Okay, I will be in the chat, the text chat, in Teams. If you've got any questions, if you want to ask me a question, put it in there. If you want me to go on to the video chat, not the video chat, the a microphone chat, and explain anything to you, more than happy to do that. Just let me know. But okay, everybody, have a good morning, and I hope that all makes sense to you. Thank you very much.